Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you guys who are watching this live here on Facebook, it is, I think, 10 minutes to 12 on this Tuesday, November the 9th. And I actually took some time to digest this story that I'm going to talk about here in this video, about a young man from Nigeria. He's Igbo. He follows my page on Facebook. He actually was on one of my recent lives that I did where I was talking about spiritual gifts. He responded actually to that live. And I felt like I can tell when there's a connection that I have with someone, right? Like, you know, something is there, something about this person, right? And so he reached out to me and asked that I become his mentor. Now, I had to think about this, right? I'm like, okay. He emailed me. And I have to be quite honest, right? Because I know I get a lot of emails from various people in response to the videos that I make. So this is nothing out of the ordinary. People email me, inbox me all the time, saying, hey, I saw your video. They want to solicit my interest in doing like one-on-one consultations over the phone, over video, in person. And honestly, I'm not at that point right now where I want to commit to doing one-on-one consultations. Something that I am going to seriously consider, though. So it's not off the table. But at the present moment, I am not doing it, right? And I've had people inbox me in relation to all different types of video topics, especially relating to relationship support and advice. And here we have more of a, I would say it's a more significant issue. It's a deeper issue than what I've been asked to provide consultation for previously, as it relates to like relationships and alternative lifestyle and cuckolding, right? I'm going to read you guys the email that he sent me. And I told him that he will remain anonymous, as do all of the people who inbox me and I create these video responses to, mainly to spread awareness about issues, because sometimes we think we're in it by ourselves, right? Life is tough. And I know with this advent of social media, people give off the persona, people are misguided, people are disillusioned into thinking that life is just peaches and cream, right? No, it's not just peaches and cream. People only post the good stuff on social media, right? And if you're not careful, as you're on social media and you're scrolling and looking at all the smiling faces and people living a great life, perceivably, right? It could make you feel somewhat inadequate, insecure about your own life. So I urge people to take caution in doing so, right? Don't get caught up in that. I mean, it's nice to see people having a good time. It's nice to see people winning, right? You know, achieving success on social media, happy and love and all that good stuff. But I think it's unfair because we don't get to see the other side. And we know that there is a balance. So know that life is about balance. When you see that there are things that are going well in life, there are also things that are equally going wrong and really bad in life. In the same life, right, within one person. It's not always good. Like, it's a balance, yo. It's a yin and the yang. And it's unfortunate that on social media we have this false portrayal of the good life. Because it's not fair. It's not. And I think that I'm going to make a conscious effort to, as I vlog my own bits and pieces of my own personal life, because I don't show everything clearly. You can't show every single thing, but I think that it's important to also show the humanitarian side, right? Show like the real side. Show just what it's like to just be a human being, because sometimes it can come off as a bit superficial if you're only posting everything that's going well, right? And then obviously for people who are, let's say, social media influencers, you're public figures, you have a brand that you want to protect, you have an image, right, that you want to put out there. So I get it, but I mean, it's kind of, like I said, it's kind of unfair. So I'm going to read you guys this email. And I like to do these. I open this up for not just this person, but anyone who has a story. We all have a story. And if you would like for me to share my spiritual perspective driven by my own personal experience and my professional experience, obviously, having studied psychology, I continue to study psychology. I work in the field of psychology. I'm a psychologist living here in New York City. So I do come at things from a certain angle that I think that many of you guys do appreciate. So feel free to reach out to me if you would like to share your story. Like I said, you will remain anonymous. It's not so much about, who said it, as it is about, how we look at the issue that is presented to us and what are the solutions, right? We're not in it by ourselves. We all are in this life together, and many of us are going through the exact same thing. So I remember, like, as I read this email that he sent me, I'm like, wow, how much I can relate to this. Granted, we live on two different sides of the world, right? He's in Nigeria. I'm obviously here in America. I've never left America. Born and raised here in America. Grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. So I can't say I know what it's like living in Nigeria. I see various depictions of what life is like in Nigeria. More recently, I've been exposed to very positive, motivating, inspiring images and videos of what life is like in Nigeria. Like images they don't show on TV, so to speak, right? Because I like to follow vloggers, people who go, travel vloggers, people who go to different countries and they show you what the culture is like in these different countries. And so that is that's pretty much what I've been exposed to as far as Nigeria. But I also see like what's in mainstream media, right? In the news, and poverty, people struggling. And here's a guy who reached out to me. In his initial email, he says, "Good evening. I'm a black man," he meant to say. "I love what you do. Thank you so much. I made a request of you being my mentor, instructor, and my advisor because I lost my dad 2006 and life has not been easy." So here is a man who has been struggling intensely since the loss of his dad in 2006. So we're talking about 15 years, right? Now, I had some questions to follow up because I wanted to kind of flesh out more of his situation, right? So I asked him to send a reply to me answering the following questions. And I asked him, how old were you when your father died? What was the cause of death? That's important. What unresolved issues, if any, did you have with your father, right? And you guys will see my rationale for asking these questions as we go deeper into his story. What is your country or tribe of origin, and how does this impact your view of death in general? Now, I don't think he quite answered this question in the way that I meant for it to be answered, because I had a specific reason for why I asked that, in terms of how his cultural views impact his view of death. But we'll go into talking about his answer. I asked a few more questions. I asked him, if you could write a short letter to your father, what would you say? What was the role your father played in your life and in your family altogether? And so he responded relatively quickly. He emailed me initially on November 6th. I sent a reply on November 7th, and he sent a reply on November the 8th. So here we are. He says that he was only 15 years old when his father left him and his 6 other siblings. So I did want to follow up, but I figure I'll go ahead and do this video. I'm sure he'll watch it. How it usually works when I provide my video responses in this kind of informal consultation format is that I give my video response. The person who requested the consultation will watch the video. Of course, you'll see that I made certain comments, I have certain concerns, certain questions that need follow-up. Then they reply to me in a private email, right? Do not comment. Do not answer these questions on the video, right? Make yourself, maintain your, I can never say that word, right? Make sure that you maintain your anonymity. Wait, let's look it up to see how to pronounce it. I can never pronounce it right. Anonymity. Got it. Anonymity. All right. So that, you know, you maintain your sense of confidentiality, and that, you know, it's not about who sent the email. We don't want to put anyone here on blast and reveal anyone's personal information, right? This is a video that is made for instructional and teaching purposes, and also to provide emotional support, because this is just a issue of humanity here. And I have a lot to say. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I do feel passionate about issues relating to people, more specifically melanated people, black people, African people. Like, my heart goes out. And with him saying he was 15 years old at the time, that's still young. That's very young, even though he is a teenager. He's in the developmental stage where he's discovering who he is and what his life path will look like. So to lose your father at that age, I only can imagine how it kind of thrust him into a higher level of responsibility that he had to take. Right, he was forced to take at a premature age, before he was even equipped to take this level of responsibility. He was forced into taking this level of responsibility after the sudden death or unexpected death of his father. He had 6 other siblings. I'm assuming he is the oldest. He could have an older sibling. But him being a male, perhaps, especially having this weight on his shoulders, feeling the weight, right, of losing a father. And we're going to talk about, like, the role that his father had played in the family, in his life, and how that has impacted the family. So let's continue. He says that his father was suffering from tuberculosis and there was no money to take him to the hospital. Now, that issue, I don't think it's uncommon, but as, like, he answers my questions, it raises some, like, more questions for me, right? Because, like I said, I know some things about Nigeria, but there are a lot of things I don't know. I just don't know, right? Like, I'm aware that access to healthcare is an issue. Is an issue there. Access to money, you know, as a resource, obviously, is an issue. That was an issue for him and his family, and not having the money to take his father to the hospital to get treatment for tuberculosis. Now, granted, I don't know what type of tuberculosis his father was suffering from, right? I do know that TB is obviously, it's an issue that can be treated. Any health issue can be treated, right? Um, he goes on to say that he had no issue with his father, so that's a good thing. At least, like, you didn't have to, because sometimes when family members or loved ones like slip away from under us, like, there is a level of guilt associated with that, that is primarily linked to things that we left unturned, right? Things that we were supposed to say to that person, we were supposed to do, but we didn't do yet, right? And so we feel a sense of guilt in a bad way, right? He says, my country is Nigeria and my tribe is Igbo. Impact my country has unto me is that there is no work for graduate. My mom has been hawking pure water along the street. Now, I had to look that up, right? I was actually, like, go back to my follow-up email that I sent him. I was really wanting to know, like, how does his culture, being an Igbo man, impact his view of death, right? Not how it, how his, but this kind of ties into it, right? So I had to actually research what hawking pure water is. Hawking, as in Hawking. I had to look that up. I'm like, okay, I think I have an idea of what that is, but I just wanted to confirm and make sure, right? Hawking pure water, that's a whole industry, that's a whole business, right? It's a practice that people, especially in the context of let's say, these types of countries where access to clean drinking water is an issue, right? So then that becomes an opportunity for a business, right, to make money from that, given that it's not easy to get clean drinking water. You have people selling water. And so that's what his mother does. He says that his mom has been hawking pure water along the street to train him in school, and I managed to graduate, and my country can't provide work for me. Now, that's fucked up, but that's not far-fetched from the reality that many Americans experience, right? We talk about this often, how there's so many graduates here in America, people with bachelor's, master's, doctorate degrees that are unemployed and have been unemployed for many years on after graduating. It's like, obviously, education is a business, right? And I know I'm trying to make sure I stay on top, because I do have the tendency to kind of go off base a bit, right? But it reminds me of this whole idea of this exodus from America. A lot of Black Americans are leaving America, wanting to find kind of a sense of security, safety in other countries, right? For their emotional, mental, psychological, and physical well-being. And what they're running from is these mandates, right? These regulations with COVID-19 and just the systemic and systematic pressures of the way our society is ran here in America, right? I know a lot of people come to America in hopes of the American dream and having a better quality of life, but you have to, like, be in America, right? You have to kind of experience the fabric of America by living here and growing up here to really understand that there are a lot of woes of America that drive people away. But the things that people are running away from here in America are pretty much global. Yo, this thing is becoming so standardized across the borders, where you go to other countries, you're thinking that, oh, you're going to have this type of quality of life. You're going to escape capitalism. You're going to escape racial oppression. You're going to escape having to hustle and bustle and like, living just to keep a roof over your head. Like, you're working just to keep a roof over your head. Like, what kind of life is that, right? You get up every day and just slave on a person's job, making these corporations rich, but meanwhile, all you're able to do is just have enough, like make enough money to have a roof over your head and barely put food on your table. Can you say that you're really living, or are you just existing, right? So I'm in a conversation now currently with a guy who actually is from Florida, but he lives here in the northeastern part of the country. And we're having this really deep conversation about living off grid, so to speak, right? And I had to like give him a different perspective, because I think sometimes we in our minds create this utopia, just like people from other countries have this fucking dream of what they think America is gonna be like, right? And then they get here and they find like, damn, I am fucking struggling. I've met so many countless number of Africans, yo. I'm still friends with them. I've met over the years, I've met these guys who, yo, I don't even want to get into talking about like the level of struggle, because I want to make sure that I give justice to this particular story. But it's just to set the context, yo, of the reality that a lot of these things that people are running from, we're all kind of going through it, right? I mean, you have Africans here in America thinking that this is like the place to be, working, slaving. I would say it's not even fucking working. It's at the point of fucking slavery. 75, 80 hours a week. And I'm like, how much are you making for 75, 80 hours a week? $400 a week. Now that may seem like, oh, that's a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money. That's highway robbery to put in 75 to 80 hours a week. Like, it just blew my mind, right? Because this guy is very talented. This person that I'm talking about, this is just an example, but this is not an anomaly. This is something that a lot of Africans are experiencing here. People who were born in Africa have migrated here to America in hopes of a better quality of life. It's insane, right? But people think that, okay, I guess in their mind they feel like, okay, it's better than the conditions that they came from. But if you're working just as hard, probably twice, 3 times as harder, probably 5 times, 10 times as harder that you were working in Africa, is it really better? Or are you just wanting to say you have bragging rights of, oh, I'm in America, I got a taste of what America is like? But the fact that he's saying he's a graduate and his country can't provide work, that is not uncommon, because a lot of Black Americans are experiencing the same issue. So the question I asked him, if he could write a letter to his father, what would he say? He says, the short letter I will write to my dad is that I love him so much. Of course, he loves his father. I wish he didn't die. He would have helped his mom and trained him and his siblings. So that's something I have a question about, right? I guess there are many different routes to being able to provide, quality of life, or a sense of quality of life in Nigeria. But that's my question for you guys who are watching, and for you who are from Nigeria. Like, what are the routes? Right? I know here in America, okay, you go to school, that's one thing you can do, right? And then school trains you to enter into a certain particular profession that requires college education, that requires a degree, right? Or licensure to enter a certain profession. That's why people go to college, right? I know there's a lot of negative talk about, why go to college? It's a waste of money. It's just a business. They just want to take your money. But I feel like, okay, yes, that's true, but it's competitive. I mean, you have to know that you live in a very competitive, money-driven country. So in knowing that you are up against competition, It's not to throw away all the years that you put into investing in education. I think that's silly, because some people want to say, "Oh, going to school is dumb." Now, someone actually commented on my video when I was live, right? Knowing that I'm a college graduate, knowing that I have 4 degrees, right? A bachelor's, 2 masters, and a PhD, and they say, "Oh, going to school is dumb," and it's just like, I think it's about what you do with it. It's all about what you choose to do with it, right? Me, I am fucking driven. And I'm 38 years old. I have to kind of share a little bit about my story. Some of you guys may not know. But I've struggled. I'm from Florida. Having a bachelor's degree, I got the chance to experience what it's like to be homeless, right? With being college educated with a bachelor's degree, right? Before that, and I was very young, I must say. I was in my early 20s, right? Or, yeah, roughly mid-20s, I would say. Mid-20s, kind of like mid to late 20s when this happened. And I would say before that, I had like this attitude, like, this whole idea, I kind of bought into this whole idea of a meritocracy, which I think still has some merit to it to a certain extent, right? This whole idea that, oh, if you just work hard, then you will be successful, right? That's part of it, though. But that's not the only variable when it comes to the outcome of success. There are many other variables that we as individuals, hardworking individuals, very goal-driven, ambitious individuals don't have control over. These other extraneous variables, right, that lie outside of our control. And those variables tie into the way our system is set up, right? We're talking about these systems of racial oppression, marginalization of certain people, right? White people having privilege. And knowing that you can be as hardworking of a person, as smart and very qualified for a particular position, doesn't mean you're going to get it if you're going against other white people, right? Because, yes, there are people who get offered a job just because they're white. There's so many different, and I think that this is the issue when you have Africans or other people come over to this country and they're just like, oh, y'all making excuses, but you have to live in this skin to know what it's like, right, to be a black person living in America. And so I got a chance to experience that. Like I said, before I experienced that, I was one of those people like, like you kind of have this pompous attitude, like, yeah, I worked hard. I got a degree. I'm going to be successful. And you're looking at people who are, let's say, criminals, right, and drug dealers, and like, what's wrong with you, right? Until the tables fucking turn. And you see what life is all about. But you have to live it, to know it, to experience it, to really see that, oh, it's not that cut and dry. It's not that black and white as just, oh, work hard. Then you will be, it's more, like I said, is more to the story. And so living in Florida, and there are different parts, I would say, of America, different regions, different cities that I think black people are like at a better advantage, right? My experience, and during the time period when I was living in Jacksonville, Florida, my hometown, and seeking employment, right? Seeking to utilize and see the manifestation of the fruits of my labor, right? Use my degree. It just wasn't panning out for me. Especially being very much conscious too. Like, I didn't just step into consciousness. I always kind of been this woke person, my locks obviously are a reflection of that. I started my locks my junior year of college, right? Before I even graduated college, right? So we're talking about going all the way back. Now, people can say, okay, well, things have gotten better. possibly say yeah, because even when I went to visit Jacksonville more recently, this year actually, I see where, okay, there's some more color. There's some more, some more color in corporate America. Perhaps blacks may have a better position, right? Better leverage within the economy, and being able to, get hired. But during that time, right? We're talking about many years ago, right? We're talking about early 2000s. I graduated college in 2006, and so we're talking about around the era of Obama presidency, 2000s. Like, actually, it started before he got elected with 2009. Yeah. So we're talking about, this happened like 2007, like 2008, 2009. That was like around the recession time, right? Jeezy released that album, Recession. And I'm talking about the struggle phase of my life, you guys, holding a bachelor's degree. And so going through that, it made me think like, oh, okay, now I see. Not to justify it. I don't want you guys to twist up my words, right? But, the picture came very clear to make me see like, oh, I see now why people commit crimes, right? And like they say, all of us, or many of us, shall I say, are just a paycheck away from being homeless. So you just got to be careful, because you never know when those tables will turn. And you get to see what it's like. You see why mothers, right, low income mothers will walk up into a store and steal some fucking diapers, steal some milk, some formula, steal food, steal some pots and some pans to cook. Not to justify it, but if you gotta eat and you don't have any immediate resources at the time, right, and then you're in this kind of fight or flight mode, you're under a lot of stress, what do? You're trying to fight to survive. What do? So it makes it very clear the why. And then you begin to develop more empathy for people in those situations, especially you having gone through it yourself. Knowing what it feels like to panhandle on the side of the street and ask strangers for money and to be looked down upon, like, and to see that people are judging you without a word coming out their mouth, but you can just see it all over their face, right? While you have an empty stomach. While you're looking for a place to cleanse yourself, to shower. Hiding in public restrooms because someone is knocking on the fucking door saying, come out. Because you've been in there for too long, because you're trying to do a bird bath, right? Just knowing what that's like. I know what that's like. I've been down that road, right? So he goes on to say, my father was in charge of the family. Makes sense. It's patriarchal type of society, right? He would give him pocket money. He says, he tells him about the bad and the good. His English doesn't seem to be that good, but he's doing his best here in this email. He says, he was providing for family and now he's no more. We have been feeding from mouth to mouth. It's not been easy. And I'm like, my heart goes out. Now, when we look at his story, there's a lot here going on in this story, right? The first I think a most pressing issue, obviously, is just them not having basic needs being met, or striving to get their basic needs met in terms of food. I don't know if he doesn't have shelter or what their housing situation looks like. He did not mention that in the email, but he did mention, like, just, it's been a struggle, right? Just trying to get food and, you know, feeding from mouth to mouth. But that, I mean, having gone through that, knowing what that's like, right? And I have to give like a kind of disclaimer to say that my struggle phase, it wasn't that, oh, I don't have family. Because of course I have family, and I come from a family that I've always grown up with, you know, food, you know what I'm saying, shelter, like having my basic needs met, more than enough. I've grown up, I come from a family where I would say more than enough, right? So it's not that I don't have family, but living in this kind of culture in America where every man is for himself, right? Another aspect of that is that it's unfortunate, but it's a cultural thing here in America where, yes, even though my family is supportive, and this is not just my family, but a lot of families are like this, it's like they expect you to kind of go out and get it, right? And if you come to rely upon them, not that you can't, you can come to rely upon family if you need, you know what I'm saying, let's say you need to borrow some money, or if you know, just need a place to lay your head for maybe a week or a couple of weeks, right? But it's not that you can just get comfortable and move in and just be living. Like, no, that's not how shit is here in America. Like, you got to get up and go get the bag yourself. The bag meaning like source of income, a job. You got to go out there and get it. Even as a woman, you have to go out there and get it. And even if you fall on hard times, which I did, and you go and you lean on the shoulder of family members, it's like having to face this judgment, right? The stares, and being treated like a certain, like being treated, looked down upon, right? It kind of like, it complicates the situation even more. It makes it worse because you're already feeling shame. You're already feeling inadequate. You feel stressed. You fucking depressed. You oppressed. You got all these negative emotions that you feel, right? And then you're reaching out to someone, for your family member, loved one, you know, for assistance, whether it be money or just simply laying on a couch, like, kind of lay on your couch, you know. That's it. You ain't even got to be looking for money. Just laying on a couch. And it's just like, you dealing with them not wanting you there. It's going to come a point where, okay, initially they may say, oh, you can come over, you know, sure, you know, you can stay here. But you're not going to be able to stay there for long. Like, you know that your welcome has been worn out. You've worn out your welcome. I experienced that. I'm not going to go into too much detail here in this video about that. But just read my book, American Dreamer, when it comes out, you guys. My autobiography that I wrote. And it's just like, I look at things. I look at the yin and the yang, right? So it's not like, oh, it's a bad thing, or it's all bad or all good. You know, there's advantages and disadvantages to that, right? So, you know, family members kind of showing you that tough love, pushing you to get out there. I kind of would prefer that. I don't need you to coddle me necessarily, but I think I could have done away with the judgment and kind of like the mistreatment and treating me as though, you know, I'm just some motherfucker on the street, some stranger on the street, right? So that is unfortunate. And being in a situation, like, a lot goes through a person's mind, you know, when your survival is at stake, not knowing, okay, where your next meal is coming from, if you're going to have a place to stay. That affects a person's psyche, their mental health, right? And it also kind of creates a chemical imbalance in a lot of people. Hence the reason why you see people who are homeless tend to disassociate from reality. And it's something that, like, it's a process that happens on a neurobiological level that happens kind of automatically as, I think, a coping mechanism, right? It's a more of an adaptive mechanism to protect oneself from the current reality, because the current reality is just too much to fathom, right? So the brain, the body has a miraculous way of creating like this different reality that people who are under experience a lot of trauma stemming from situations such as this, right? Very dire, situations where you're kind of living, like he says, feeding mouth to mouth, struggling to survive. It creates this trauma, right? And that trauma, undergoing so much stress, leads to that type of psychological, neurobiological response. So you have that going on, right? Then he's still grieving the loss of his father. I want to talk about that for a bit. I wanted to tap into like how his culture impacts his view of death, but he kind of answered that question from a different angle. Basically talking about how his culture kind of impacted life after his father's death on a practical level, with him not being able to find work, and just not, his country not being able to provide for him kind of having to be faced with the reality of what it's like to be a young man in Nigeria, like kind of being thrust out there, out of the nest, right? But I have to say this. Now, he says he was 15 years old when this happened. Granted, technically here in America, you're not an adult legally until you turn 18 years old. I don't know what it is in Nigeria. Feel free to drop that comment below. But I have to say this because it makes me wonder. Sometimes I think we hold on to this idea of how we think things should have been, right? And he's kind of like fixated in time. I would not be surprised if psychologically and developmentally he is still fixated in that time period when his father died, because that's a very traumatic experience, right? To have to go through the loss of your parent at that age, at any age, especially at that age. It's just like, oh gosh, what do I do now? I'm not even prepared, and it also makes me wonder, like, okay, he's saying how his father's death negatively impacted the family. It kind of like put them in a very bad financial situation, right? Because his father was a provider. Granted, when you look at the life expectancy of people living in Nigeria, seems like it went up. It was like, I think, 54 years old for men, but it seems like it possibly went up over the past 2 years, since 2019, where it is, I think, 59 years old for men and 63 years old for women. Now, that is still relatively a lesser amount of life expectancy compared to what the life expectancy here is in America. I think average is 78. So we live, by comparison, I would say at least 20 years longer, 20 to 20 plus years longer, 24 years longer on average here in America than what it would be like living in Nigeria, right? And a lot of things factor into that, like when you live in that hard life. He's saying his mom is out there hawking pure water along the street. This is his mother. His mom is not supposed to be doing that, right? And it makes me wonder, like, okay, what is he doing, right? Because, like I said, like losing a parent, your caretaker, like your mother and your father are your primary caretakers, right? Responsible for your growth, your well-being, and then snatched away from you unexpected. That does negatively impact your development, psychological, emotional, physical development. It's like it arrests your development, right? And this happened okay, he's 30 years old now. This was 15 years ago, right? This was 15 years ago. We're talking something about something that happened in 2006. We're now in 2021, 15 years ago. So he's about 30 years old, right? And it makes me wonder, like, okay, it sounds like he's still living in that period, in that time, mentally. Because it makes me wonder, when you think about, okay, what would a 30-year-old Nigerian man, what would his life look like at this point, right? Let's say his father didn't die. What would his life look like? What would he be doing, right? And maybe it might be a stretch, but I have to push it there, or I have to take it there. It's like, could he possibly be getting in the way of his own happiness, right? His own quality of life, his own progression, maybe his own healing, by assuming that he can't go forward with his life, right? Because he's saying that, obviously, in his mind, he thinks that his family's life would be much different if his father was here, because his father was a provider. His father died when he was only 15 years old. But I'm like, what's getting in the way? I'm trying to figure out what's getting in the way of him being able to live that life that he imagined his life would be like if his father was still here. What is getting in the way of him being able to do that? He's saying that his father would have been there to train him, right? Because I asked him what was his father's role. And he says that, he would write a letter to his dad saying he loved him. He wished he wouldn't die. He would have helped his mom, train him and his siblings. But train in what way? How to just do basic things like survival skills, survival techniques, daily, just basic daily living skills, that are important to the context in which, the culture in which you live in. Train you how to do that. Train you how to go out and get a job, right? To do the skills that's necessary to be able to get hired for a job in Nigeria. What is this training that you were expecting from your dad? And is it possible that you can get that training elsewhere, right? Because I would like to believe that in Nigeria and within Igbo culture, right, there's a sense of community, right? Like people who are not necessarily kin to you, blood kin, biologically kin to you, are there, are around, are accessible, that they can step in and, figuratively kind of speaking, to a certain extent, be able to fill those shoes of your father, right? Fill that role that your father played. Does that no longer exist, are you saying, in Igbo culture? Does that no longer exist in Nigeria, where there's a sense of community that extends beyond your blood family, your immediate family being your mom, your sister? I mean, your mom, your father, and your siblings, right? I'm trying to figure this out because I think that's an important piece to you being able to kind of pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, right? In a sense where, you don't have to live life, continue to walk this lifestyle as a victim. Makes me remember how I said on my Facebook post, and this was a while, this was years ago, a couple years ago, where I said depression is a lifestyle. And I got attacked for saying that. People were like, oh no, it's a medical condition. As if I don't know that, right? But I said it from a place of empowerment. Because we know lifestyles are something that we create. We have the ability within ourselves to create a certain lifestyle, right? That lifestyle also can be impacted by the environment in which we live in, right? And the resources that we have available to us. Veganism, vegetarianism, those are lifestyles, right? Sometimes people say, oh, well, it's very costly, it's very expensive to be a vegan, right? So if one is going to live that lifestyle, they have to have access to vegan food. You know what I'm saying? It's a certain kind of food, organic food, plant-based food, in order to be vegan. You can have this idea in your mind, oh, I want to be vegan, I want to live the lifestyle, but do you have the resources within, your means, financial means, to be able to purchase this food? And do you have stores around you, markets around you that are within your reach to be able to, where you can go and buy this food from, right? So yes, lifestyles are within a person's individual control that they can create, but it's also dependent. It depends on, their environment too, right? What is at their disposal. So when I talk about depression being a lifestyle, I'm talking about, yes, it's something within one's control. As speaking from a place of empowerment, right? And sometimes we create this narrative in our minds, and sometimes we can be our worst enemy, right? Because we don't take advantage of the power that lies within us. Somehow we have been convinced to believe that the power we need to overcome whatever obstacle it is outside of us, right? We're looking to religion and to the church, and not to undermine those things. Those are important if you know how to galvanize those resources and use them for your advantage, right? And see through, I think, sometimes, because there's a lot of hypocrisy in religion too. So you have to have your mind open, your eyes open to what the truth is, right? Because as much as religion can be beneficial, not religion, but I would say the cultural aspect, the community aspect of religion can be beneficial in providing that emotional support that one may need. It can also be a detriment too, because it limits you in your ability to believe that you have within you what you need, right? And sometimes certain religions preach or teach that the power lies on the outside of you. So you're kind of like praying, and you spend hours praying, expecting something to fall out of the sky, and expecting some white Jesus to come save you. And it's like, no. It starts within your mind. This is why I love to study psychology, because we don't understand the power of our own thought. And knowing that, if you can change the way you think about a thing, you can change your whole reality. So I'm going to say this before I end this video, because it's just very well maybe a 2-3 part series, and I do encourage the person who requested this video to come back and engage via email, private email, in response to this video, so we could continue the discussion. And I encourage you guys to feel free to leave your comments below. But for his situation, I would have to say that I think that he is psychologically trapped into a certain time and space in his life. Obviously, when he was 15 years old, and that very tragic, traumatic experience, unfortunate experience happened. But it's also in how he chooses to move forward too, and that's going to determine his well-being, his trajectory of his life going forward, right? Because he has the power to change his own life trajectory going forward, and how he reframes his situation, and going back to the perception of death, right? How we conceptualize and perceive what is death, Granted, we have attachments to people, here in this realm. And another thing about, I feel like it's a bit misinformation, right? It's kind of a bit I feel like it's a misguiding of religion, especially within Christianity, for tell people that, oh, you know, you have to believe in Jesus Christ. You don't believe in Jesus Christ, you're going to go to hell, right? So they kind of creates like this major stigma surrounding death. Now, you're watching this, you can believe what you want to believe, right? But I am giving you a taste of my belief, right? Because it was requested. It was only because it was requested. So this is a taste of what I believe in spiritually, which isn't tied to any organized tradition or religion, so to speak. But coming more so from the God within myself, knowing that we all have God power. We are a reflection of God. And when it comes to this concept of death, because I think that's a whole video by itself, but I have to slow down here. When it comes to, like, people look at death as the end, when it's really the beginning. It's a point in one's transition from one realm to another realm, or one dimension to another dimension. But because we have a certain way of looking at life, and our attachments that we have created here in this life, right? Whether it's to our mom, to our father, yes, it becomes a very painstaking reality for us when we lose those attachments, right? When someone dies, and not to invalidate one's feelings associated with the loss of that kind of attachment, because yes, I think that's natural. It's natural to grieve. It's natural to feel sad, to feel anger when you lose a loved one, because you're connected to that person. Spiritually, you're connected to them, right? You are 23 chromosomes of your father and your mother, right? So of course you should feel something when that person in the carnal reality dies, right? Of course that's like a part of you. You are a part of your father. So yes, you're going to feel something biologically. On a biological level, you should feel something. That's how you know you're alive, because you felt something when your father died when you were 15 years old, right? But coming to a higher level of consciousness and awareness and acceptance of this reality, this situation here, that is a part of life. We all go through it. These stages of life, these transitions in life. I think it's important to find meaning in your father's transition. Because I don't believe that people die. I just don't. I believe that what's keeping us alive is an eternal spirit that really doesn't know time, right? And the carnal sense, as human beings, we create this meaning of, like, this or illusion of what time is, right? And we're like, okay, this person died when they were, 40. And we put time on our own lives and say, oh, I'm 38 years old, right? But it's like, what is time? Eternal spirit doesn't recognize time in that way. So I think in order to really be able to fully understand this, it does require a degree of stepping into a spiritual awakening. So you can't understand it if you're looking through a certain lens that has not awakened. People call it the third eye, right? But it's just a level of consciousness within you. It won't make sense. The words won't make sense. And sometimes people don't really understand it until they transition or die, right? Then you see, oh, that there's no such thing as death. But you shouldn't have to die to come into an understanding of that awareness, that reality, that death really doesn't exist. People don't die. They only transition. And so knowing that, you won't feel as bad, though not to say you don't miss your father, of course, right? But coming into understanding and creating a meaning surrounding this transition, and then releasing yourself from being stagnated, from your development being arrested, like retarded in a sense. You can, like, a person's development can be retarded, where it's like you're fixated, you're stuck in that period of time when you lost your father, right? And tapping back into that so you can release yourself from that, and you can grow and become the man, the beautiful, strong man that your father created and envisioned that you would be. He would want you to be that. He would want you to go on into, you are his legacy. You are your father's legacy, right? So it's your job now to make your father proud, to no longer hold on to those excuses, though they have been comforting for you to, feel disempowered. That's a sense of, I think, empowerment in a way, ironically speaking, to allow yourself and position yourself in a state of disempowerment or victimhood, especially being that you were a child and you're holding on to that victimhood, right? That can feel empowering, right? To hold on to that. It can be very scary to look at and envision the other side of what life would be like for you. Releasing that part of you, right? Because that's only one part of you. That's only one aspect of your identity. But stepping into a new identity, growing from that. Not to say it's going to happen overnight, though. It takes time. But it starts in your mind, though. Knowing that you have what it takes within you. You don't have to go out. You have to go within yourself, in a quiet space of your own mind, to know that it is within you, my brother, to grow from that in a very healthy and productive way. On that note, I'm going to end this video. Feel free to share your comments below. Only if they're positive, right? I watch my comments like a hawk. I'm very particular about my space and what people say in my space. I don't allow people to just dump their fucking negative projections into my space, whether it's a video about me or about someone else. It's still my space, and as long as I have control over my space, I am not going to allow that. So this is only about positive affirmation, saying things that will help empower this brother, educate us, because I don't know everything. And I would like to even be humble enough to admit, especially when it comes to Nigeria, I probably know nothing really. I don't know very little, right? I know that $1 US equals about roughly 410 Naira, right? So the exchange rate is pretty good for US dollars. And I know one may be thinking, oh, well, that could be the solution to his problem. But one thing I'm hesitant about is giving money to people who are in financial need. I feel like money isn't always the answer. Like they say, you can give a man a fish or you can teach a man a fish. I think it's better for a man to learn how to fish, because you have what you need within you. You have to know that, though. If you don't believe that you have what you need within you, then you don't. It's not gonna mean anything, right? You have to know that you have what you need within you. Not to say I'm completely opposed to it. I'm more reluctant to give money. Not to say I'm completely opposed to the idea, like I wouldn't do it. I would. But I will have to know that it's going to be a seed planted in the right soil, and soil being within a person of the right mind. Right? You have to be in the position of the right mind to be able to replicate that. Right? To allow that seed to grow. Because if not, you can just become more poor and more fucked up than what you already are. Just taking money, because that money isn't the answer. It's definitely not money. It's your state of mind and coming into a deeper understanding of yourself. On that note, you guys, send positivity for those who wish to comment. Send warm wishes. And I will catch you guys at the next one.